The dog that wouldn't let go. The sky was painted in streaks of fading orange and pink as Deputy Scott Mercer steered his patrol car along the quiet stretch of road at the edge of town. The evening air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. It had been a long shift. Nothing unusual, just the occasional traffic stop and a few routine calls. He was about to turn toward the main road when something darted across his headlights. A dog. Mercer's foot slammed the brakes, his heart jolting in his chest. The golden retriever, mud-caked and scruffy, bolted from the tree line and ran straight toward an old, abandoned house that stood like a rotting skeleton on the outskirts of town. "Where the hell is he going?" Mercer muttered, shifting the car into park. The house had been sitting empty for years, a forgotten relic with crumbling walls, shattered windows, and a roof that sagged like tired shoulders. Kids used to dare each other to go inside. But even they had stopped. The house had a way of swallowing people's courage whole. The dog didn't hesitate. It leaped onto the rickety porch, squeezed through a gap where the front door hung off its hinges, and disappeared inside. "That's weird," Mercer said under his breath. "What's weird?" Officer Jeff Daniels, his partner, said from the passenger seat, looking up from his coffee. "A dog just ran into that house like it owns the place." Daniels raised an eyebrow. "Abandoned house. Middle of nowhere. I don't like it." "Neither do I," Mercer admitted, a feeling creeping up his spine that he couldn't quite shake. Something was off. A house forgotten by time. Mercer and Daniels stepped out of the cruiser. The air smelled stale as they approached the house, the wooden steps groaning under their weight. "Come on, buddy," Mercer called softly, peering through the gap in the door. "Let's get you out of here." Silence. Only the faint creak of old beams settling, like the house itself was breathing. Daniels pulled out a flashlight, casting a shaky beam into the darkness. Dust hung in the air like trapped ghosts. The wallpaper had peeled away in long, curling strips, revealing the bare bones of the house beneath. Then, a sound. A whimper. Mercer froze. He exchanged a glance with Daniels, then stepped forward. The floor groaned beneath his boots as he moved past an overturned chair, a moth-eaten couch, and a pile of scattered newspapers that were decades old. Another whimper, closer this time. Then came a scratching sound. Mercer turned a corner and found the dog sitting beside a tall wooden cabinet, its nose pressed against the door, paws scratching feverishly at the wood. Something, or someone, was inside. "Easy, buddy," Mercer whispered, crouching down. "What are you trying to tell us?" The dog let out a soft whine, tail thumping weakly against the floor. Daniel stepped forward, his flashlight illuminating the cabinet. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" Mercer didn't answer. He reached out, gripped the old handle, and pulled. The cabinet door creaked open, and Mercer felt his breath hitch in his throat. Huddled inside, wrapped in a dusty, threadbare blanket, was a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old. Her blonde hair was tangled, her cheeks smudged with dirt, and her blue eyes wide with fear. She didn't move, didn't speak. She just stared up at them, silent, trembling, clutching the fabric of her blanket as if it were the only thing anchoring her to reality. "Oh my God," Daniels breathed. Mercer swallowed hard. Who was she? How had she gotten here? And why was she all alone? But then, a terrifying realization hit him. She wasn't alone. The dog had been with her, watching, guarding, protecting. For how long? And why? The rescue. Mercer's hands were gentle as he reached into the cabinet. The little girl flinched, pulling back. Hey, he said softly. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're safe now." The dog pressed closer, nudging her protectively. The girl's small fingers buried into his fur, as if she needed him to be real, to be solid. Daniels ran a hand down his face. "How long do you think she's been here?" Mercer shook his head. "Too long." He pressed the radio on his shoulder. "Dispatch. "This is Deputy Mercer. I need immediate medical assistance at the old Morrison house. We found a child. Approximate age, 5 years old. Conscious but unresponsive." The radio crackled. "Copy that, Deputy." Ambulance en route. Mercer exhaled, turning back to the little girl. "Can you tell me your name, sweetheart?" She didn't answer, didn't even blink. But as he carefully reached for her, she didn't resist. She let him lift her into his arms. And as he carried her toward the front door, the dog followed, never straying from her side. A silent bond. Outside, the distant wail of an ambulance pierced the quiet night. Mercer felt the girl shiver against him, her tiny hands gripping his shirt. He looked down at the golden retriever, whose amber eyes never left the child. "You did good, buddy," Mercer murmured. The dog wagged its tail, but only once, like a quiet acknowledgement. Daniels knelt beside the retriever, scratching behind its ears. "You're not just some stray, are you?" No. He had a purpose, and Mercer had a feeling this dog wasn't leaving that little girl's side anytime soon. The truth hidden in silence. The ambulance doors slammed shut, and the sirens wailed into the night, carrying the silent, fragile little girl away to safety. Deputy Scott Mercer watched as the red and blue lights flickered off into the distance, his mind racing with unanswered questions. Beside him, the golden retriever, now identified by the name on his worn collar as Charlie, stood rigid, his amber eyes locked on the retreating ambulance. "You coming, buddy?" Mercer asked softly. Charlie didn't move. "Yeah, I figured." With a sigh, Mercer and Officer Jeff Daniels climbed into the patrol car. Charlie jumped in after them, curling up in the backseat, his body tense, but his eyes never leaving the road ahead. There was still too much they didn't know. And something deep in Mercer's gut told him this wasn't over yet. A name and a whisper. The hospital room was small but warm, with pastel-colored walls meant to comfort young patients. The little girl, Emma, as she had finally whispered in the quietest voice, sat upright in the hospital bed, fingers clutching at the new blanket wrapped around her small shoulders. Charlie sat beside her, his golden fur pressed against her leg, his presence a silent shield. Emma's tiny fingers curled into his fur, gripping him as though he were the only thing tethering her to this world. Mercer pulled up a chair, keeping his voice calm and even. "Emma, can you tell me anything about what happened?" Her big blue eyes lifted toward him, hesitant. She bit her lower lip, as though deciding how much she could trust him. Then, in a whisper barely louder than the wind, she said, "We were hiding." Mercer felt his stomach tighten. From who? Emma swallowed, her grip on Charlie tightening. The dog whined softly, nuzzling against her. "A bad man," she murmured. Daniels, who had been leaning against the doorway, straightened immediately. Mercer leaned forward, keeping his voice soft. "Can you tell me what he looked like, sweetheart?" She shook her head quickly, her small shoulders hunching inward. He was scary. Mercer shared a look with Daniels. This was getting worse by the second. "Where was your mommy, Emma?" Her tiny fingers twisted the blanket around her lap. "She told me to run." Mercer felt a cold, creeping sensation along his spine. "She told me and Ben to run." The room suddenly felt too small. Daniels stepped forward. "Ben? Who's Ben?" Emma finally looked up at them, her bottom lip trembling. "My brother." Mercer's breath caught in his throat. "Where is he, Emma?" Tears welled up in her eyes, and for the first time, her voice broke. "I don't know." And then, as though she had run out of words, she turned her face into Charlie's fur and refused to say another word. A race against time. Outside the hospital, Mercer paced the pavement, foam pressed against his ear. "You sure there's nothing in the missing persons database?" The voice on the other end, an investigator from Child Services, sighed. "We've cross-checked everything. Nothing matching Emma or a missing boy named Ben in the system. It's like they don't exist." Mercer gritted his teeth. Somebody has to be looking for them. Or, Daniels muttered beside him, someone made sure there wouldn't be a report. That thought sat heavy in Mercer's chest. He ended the call and turned to Daniels. We have to find that house. The one Emma said had trees all around it. Daniels rubbed a hand over his jaw. Could be anywhere. This whole damn town is surrounded by trees. Mercer exhaled sharply. Then a sudden thought hit him. Charlie. The dog had led them straight to Emma. If there was anyone who could take them back to where it all started, it was him. Mercer turned to the retriever, who sat by the hospital doors, waiting patiently but alert. You want to take us to Ben, boy? Charlie's ears perked up, and then, without hesitation, he took off running. The house in the woods. Charlie led them deep into the back roads, where the trees thickened and the houses became scarce. Finally, they pulled up to an old, decaying farmhouse, nestled so far into the trees that it was almost swallowed by the forest. The place looked abandoned, but Mercer knew better than to trust appearances. The wind howled through the trees, rattling the shutters on the house. The front door hung open slightly, creaking as it swayed. God, I have a bad feeling about this, Daniels muttered. Mercer drew his weapon, and Daniels did the same. Charlie whined, ears back, but still stepped forward. This is where you came from, isn't it? Mercer murmured. The retriever let out a low growl. That was answer enough. Mercer stepped onto the porch, the wood groaning under his weight. He pushed the door open the rest of the way, the hinges screeching in protest. The inside smelled of damp rot and dust. And then, a sound. A muffled noise. Mercer's heart slammed against his ribs. He followed the noise to a locked door at the back of the house. Charlie whined, scratching at it. Daniels kicked it open. Inside, huddled in the darkness, tied up with a blanket thrown over him, was a boy. A young boy. Ben. A dog's loyalty knows no limits. They got Ben out safely, wrapped him in a warm blanket, and carried him to the patrol car. The boy was shaken, weak, but alive. When they arrived back at the hospital, Emma saw him through the window and burst into tears. The second he stepped inside, she ran into his arms, clutching him as though she'd never let go again. Charlie wagged his tail furiously, bouncing between them, his job finally complete. Mercer exhaled, feeling something in his chest loosen for the first time that night. This dog, this incredible, stubborn, fiercely loyal dog, had saved these kids, had never left them, had protected them when no one else could. As Mercer crouched down and scratched Charlie behind the ears, he smiled. You knew all along, didn't you, buddy? Charlie just thumped his tail against the floor, eyes bright and warm. A hero without words, and one who would never leave their side again. This concludes the story. Thank you for watching until the end. I hope you found it enjoyable. If you did, please consider liking the video and sharing it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell for more captivating stories. Have a great day.